Hello, so today we are going to be discussing Mob Psycho. I'm going to be discussing the whole series in this episode, which is only 3 seasons, and each season is only 12 to 13 episodes long, so it's not a lot of content, but there's a lot to discuss. This video is going to be spoiler light, so if you haven't watched the show, please do join me for this video. And if you have, there's still lots to discuss. However, if you're spoiler sensitive, I would skip this one. So Mob Psycho is a story following a boy named Shigeo. Mob is what he goes by. And he has these incredible powers, but these powers are activated and can easily take control by emotions. So Mob, when he was very young, he had a situation where he completely lost control and it was terrible. And since then, he's learned to completely suppress his emotions so that he doesn't lose control like that again. So Mob, at the beginning of the story, it comes off as if this is a lighthearted comedy because there's a lot of dry humor and it seems like it's just gonna be a good time. It's just gonna be great fun, and I loved it from the start because of the dry humor, the quick lines of someone who would react in this very dry but like abrupt manner. The jokes that seemed so out of left field that I couldn't help but bust out laughing. I just thought, oh, I'm in for a fun time. Was not expecting so many emotions to come with it. What also came with it is incredible animation. And again, this is represented from the very first episode. From the opening scene, we see some of the most incredible, powerful animation that stays consistent from episode 1 to the very final episode. The art style for the characters and for the setting is very simple, and it's reflective of the mangaka's personal art style, but it also just serves to amplify these incredibly animated moments when there is a moment of high tension, when there is a huge fight happening. We see visuals that are very hard to match. As a piece of art, it is worth your time. So as I said, this story was sneakily deep, and part of how we deepen Mob's character as well as the themes in the story is through the side characters. Mob works for a man who runs a psychic center. People have supernatural problems, they go to Reigen. Mob has incredible power, but he has very little charisma. Reigen has incredible charisma, but very little power. He comes off as scummy at first because he is lying constantly. He's telling people that he will help them with their supernatural problems. He's telling people that he has supernatural abilities and he will help them with their spirit problems. And then he, photoshops something out of the picture and says, ta-da, I exorcised the picture. Or he gives them a back massage and says, okay, you're no longer haunted. Don't you feel so much lighter now? He lies a lot. And he also uses Mob, barely pays him, tells him all the time, oh no, I can't sense that spirit because it's too weak for me. You handle it. And sends Mob out to handle all these big jobs that Reigen could never handle on his own, but he takes all the credit and he just sort of utilizes Mob more than he probably should. Sometimes pulling him from social engagements and just, he's selfish. Reigen is selfish. But despite him not being the goodest of goods, we see very quickly on that he really cares about Mob, like truly cares about Mob. Shows compassion a lot of times as well, in that he knows when it wouldn't be appropriate to charge someone for a job, or doesn't want to make Mob, he doesn't want to push Mob to do a certain job that leaves him vulnerable emotionally because it's pushing his morals too far. Reigen wants to be a successful businessman, and he wants to be seen as Mob's master, and he constantly postures himself as something that he's not. But Mob, from the beginning, sees him for who he actually is, a good man. Reigen is a character that on the surface looks a certain way, but as we spend more time with him, we see that there's a lot of layers to him that make him a lot more nuanced than he appears. And each character in this story gets that same treatment. The first antagonist we visit, the first antagonist we go against, his name is Dimple, and he's a spirit that's leading a cult through brainwashing. He becomes our friend. He quickly joins our crew and just kind of follows Mob around, and he plays a really big role in major points of tension in this story. But he also serves to develop Mob's character more and develop our understanding of Mob's character. Dimple constantly pushing Mob to use his power to gain power or to gain popularity or to be able to posture himself above people. Dimple pushing his ideals on Mob helps us to see that juxtaposition between those two, so we can see Mob refusing to use his powers to hurt another person or to gain power over another individual. We get to see Mob's morality very quickly as it's constantly in friction with Dimple's. And again, there is a lot of character growth that happens in this dynamic as well, but I'll leave that for you to experience. Amazing twist too. Oh my goodness. Ritsu is Mob's little brother. He looks up to Mob because of his supernatural abilities, and Mob looks up to Ritsu because of his natural abilities. School, social life, athleticism, he has everything that Mob wishes he had. And just the same, Mob has everything that Ritsu wishes for himself. They have a deep and loving bond between the two of them, but there's also fear and tension there as well that Mob isn't always aware of. And it's something that when it's explored, it makes perfect sense to the viewer why this relationship is more complicated than it appears on the surface. And many characters throughout this series don't have a character arc that looks like this. They have a character arc where they have ups and downs. They have dark moments. They make great mistakes. And Ritsu is not exempt from this. But some of my favorite episodes of the entire season are watching Mob and his consistency in how he responds to his brother even when he's at his worst. The Body Improvement Club! I think they're my favorite characters. I know I might be wrong in saying that. I know there's a lot of good characters and this seems like maybe an odd choice, but I think they're my favorite characters. A group of athletes that I thought were introduced to be a gag. There's a group of people that are trying to rope Mob into joining their club because their club doesn't have enough members and it's going to be disbanded if they don't get one more member. And so they try to make Mob their member, even though he doesn't have a lot of interest. He has work obligations. It's just not really the thing for him to do. But he agrees and he's going to be a part of them getting to keep their room and keep their club, the room that they meet in. And then it's introduced that the Body Improvement Club is going to take over that room and take over their spot not their spot, but take over that room if Mob doesn't join them. So Mob realizes, oh, but if I join the Body Improvement Club, then my crush might actually notice me because I'll, be hotter. And so then when it comes time to, okay, Mob, are you going to join our group and save us and all this that's been built up to? He turns to the Body Improvement Club and he's like, I'm gonna join you. And then the episode ends. And I thought it was a one-off gag that would quickly be resolved. But no, these characters are a part of Mob's life and a part of this story throughout. And they are some of the greatest characters because they are these athletes that have squat, what was it? Was it like a squat month? Like we're really focused on our squats this month. We don't have time for that. We gotta squat. Going on runs constantly, pulling people in to be like these jocks, right? But they are the most kind, loving, and supportive people that I have seen in media, I think. They're these macho tough guys that are all about body improvement, that are all about shepherding in Mob and other characters that come into pushing them and being pushed by them, admiring their physically weaker classmen for the strengths that they have and defending them when physically they need defending. They are the most wholesome group of friends, the most wholesome group of unexpected friends in a series full of incredibly wholesome friendships. There are tons of side characters that learn from Mob and that Mob learns from, that develop really strong bonds with one another in this series and that build up and reinforce the themes. But there's also villains that Mob comes against that directly act as an opposition to his ideals. And we learn a lot about Mob as well as about the main themes of the story through these character tensions. I'm not going to go through them all because there's so many, but also because I'm only going to talk about the characters that are introduced early on, so that I don't go, too far into it. But there's one more that I want to mention. Taro believes himself to be more important than those that are without powers, and he uses his powers to have popularity and to assert that he's better than other people. Mob refuses to fight back against him because he believes that his powers aren't what make him special. He doesn't believe in using powers to skip steps in life or using his powers to exert dominance. These two are the same in many ways, but they have made very different choices. Taro takes this encounter that he has with Mob to heart, and he experiences probably my favorite character arc of the series. But with these characters and villains that reveal who Mob is and what the themes are, Mob too changes a lot in this story. He's pushed to his limits. He has his own setbacks. He has scenes where he tries really hard to stand by what he believes, but he is pushed to his limit. And we have these incredibly animated scenes of high action and intensity that are not always depicted as hype, that are sometimes depicted as tragic, because it's not a success every time Mob overpowers someone. Sometimes this is his deficit. This is what he's trying to not become. The series is not perfect to me. There are a couple of small things that hold it back a little bit for me. One of which is that there are times where the story is so sweet that it misses me. There are actually a few instances where we have a big conflict and it's all built up brilliantly, and the action, again, the animation, again, incredible, the emotions are strong, but when it comes time to having the big conversation in the big conflict, sometimes it's so on the nose that the impact of that conversation just flies right past me. One example is there was one big reveal of who the antagonist of this section of the story is that was just, loved it so much. And everything leading up to this big conversation was so great. But then the conversation, the dialogue, there was a lot of dialogue, but when the antagonist of this moment is saying lines like, "I didn't realize until just now, all I've really wanted was a friend," it comes off to me as cheesy. Not because that sentiment doesn't make perfect sense for everything that's been built up to this point. In fact, I love where we got to at this point, and it all made perfect sense for the character and what was built, how we got here. But I would prefer to watch that revelation happen through actions as opposed to on-the-nose dialogue. And there were a couple of times where we got that really on-the-nose dialogue, kind of honing in on the main point that just didn't work for me. I realize that this is incredibly subjective and I will bum fans out by saying that, and all I have to say is I don't like that I'm this way too. I don't know why I don't like sentimental things. With that said, even when we reach those scenes that to me ended up playing out in to me they came off cheesy, even with that being true, after that scene passes and the rest of the resolution happens, I'm still crying, like when the characters are sacrificing for one another and when they reach the action point of their big character arc, when we actually see them live out what they've learned. The fact that them talking out what they've learned doesn't always work for me. Them living it out hits. Obviously, I won't tell you how the series ends, but what I will say is that the emotions hit to the very end, and that the themes of isolation, friendship, self-acceptance, and acceptance of others, even in the midst of their flaws, stay true to the final moments. Even the way things resolved down to Mob's crush and how that all played out in the end and moved forward was perfect. It was exactly what the series needed to be and was so satisfying. It's a story that's hard-hitting and hopeful, and it's one that pulls the viewer to experience this character growth alongside the characters. These characters go through tremendous amounts of character growth, and it shepherds the viewer to also make those same assessments of understanding your own worth, pushing yourself to be better, to be the best version of yourself that you can be, and also supporting those in your life as they're pushing themselves as well, but also giving them grace even when they fail, and filling in the gaps for each other and our weaknesses. Overall, Mob Psycho is not a new favorite for me, but it's one that was well worth the watch. If you have seen it, if you have opinions, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Please do let me know how you found this series, what you love about it, or why it was a miss for you. Please do chat with me more in the comments. I would love to continue the discussion. I'll see you again soon. Bye.